Welcome back to Light the Fuse. Should we call this... I was trying to think of a fun pun with Jack Reacher, and I'm sure you were too, Charles. Reach the fuse, light the reach.
We never did anything different. We kept the same Light the Fuse music. We didn't get too creative with this one.
No.
I mean, maybe down the line, maybe someday we'll do more of a series for Jack Reacher, and we'll do some interviews with some people. Maybe I'd love to talk to Caleb Deschanel. If we could make that happen at some point, that'd be awesome. Then we could do another installment of Reach the Fuse.
I love it.
Or whatever we're going to call this.
Yeah, I mean, this is the end of the year, guys. We are really on our last leg. Just be happy that there's something new this week. You know,
We're tired. You got a new episode. Just be happy.
Yeah, just move on. Move on. But
we got a lot of reactions to obviously people on social media. People who are not on social media found out from when they were listening to the podcast last week that we got the Tom Cruise cake. A lot of people are asking about it. We posted pictures on social media. I'll put pictures of the cake and the gift box that came in our show notes for this week's episode. So go to our website, lightthefusepodcast.com, go to the episode guide, look at this episode, and you will find photos of the cake. And yeah, that was an amazing experience. People keep asking us, wanting to know the full story of how it happened, and I think it was incredible. I don't know what to say other than just I mean, last year we actually tried the cake. Remember, we went and found the cake. Now, it didn't get it from Tom Cruise, but we found the store in Woodland Hills, and we did it. And we did a Patreon episode tasting the cake.
I mean, who could forget that episode? Really. But yeah, so we knew what we were getting into, and it did not disappoint.
But you know what? It tasted a lot better this time.
Oh yeah. Knowing where it came from.
I bought the cheap little mini ones for us last year. We got the big ones in the mail.
Yeah, he gives out different sizes, so the fact that we got the primo size is really saying a lot.
Yeah. Are we going to be on the list next year? We're going to have to stay in his good graces. I don't know.
I think at least for the next couple of years we'll be on the list. I mean, I think we're going to be doing a lot of hard work on these next two movies. So yeah, I think it should be good. But
we're back here today, part 2, Christopher McQuarrie. We're talking about Jack Reacher. Today we get into the nitty-gritty of the production, and we get him to talk about each of our favorite shots in the movie. This is some really great stuff. I'm excited for everyone to hear it. I don't really have anything else to say unless you've got something. You can do your favorite part of the show.
No, I think that's it. I think it's just really great that we got to get this story of Jack Reacher. We hadn't really heard him talk about it that much, so it really... I don't know. I think it's an invaluable document about Jack Reacher. So I'm so happy that we're continuing to do this. But of course, my shout outs, Jeremy Dillon and my favorite album, obviously. And he wants me to remind people about his Better Call Saul episodes, as well as John B., Elvis Ripley, and Suchet. And without these people, this show could not be possible. So we really, truly thank you all so much. And we'll be back after this interview.
I wanted to talk about the opening of the movie because the first, I think it's like 8 minutes and 20 seconds have no dialogue.
Yeah.
It's all just visual storytelling.
Yes.
And I wanted to know, was that always your plan?
Yes.
From the script phase, or did you come to it? You said it was just always from the beginning, written in the script. Like there's going to be you just wrote it out. It was just, I mean, it's
the beginning of the book. I mean, that's how the beginning of the book plays out. And it's a very effective scene. And now this was a big point of contention for much of the story. The book, because it is a book, does not identify the shooter. And as a result, the shooter's identity is a mystery throughout the book. I knew from my experience making films for audiences that audiences are working on the mystery the instant you present it to them. And if I shot a scene in such a way that I hid the shooter's identity, they would know that the shooter was not James Barr right from the beginning. So I said to Tom, why are we even bothering to do that? The audience is going to outsmart the movie. Let's just level with them right up front and show that it's not James Barr. And the movie is about Reacher uncovering this mystery. But the audience knows more than Reacher does. Now, Tom is very much about first person point of view, subjective storytelling. And so this was a big break from that for Tom, because the audience is ahead of the protagonist, and he's always concerned that the audience is going to become frustrated with the protagonist. You become frustrated, you become bored, you tune out. And I kept referencing Columbo. That Columbo, every episode of Columbo is a mystery where you know who the killer is right from the beginning. And the fun of the show is watching the cat and mouse as Columbo outsmarts this much smarter criminal. And so that's kind of where I was leaning. That liberated me, and that allowed me to design the sequence in such a way that you were just watching the anatomy of a murder. The other really critical thing was that I do not believe in the glorification or the fetishization of violence. And the more violent something is, the more the more visceral I feel it has to be. So I wasn't going to make this perverse. I was going to force the audience to watch it, and that's why that scene is designed the way that it is. Is that, you know, I'm going back to Hitchcock, and I'm putting you in the point of view of the killer, and I'm creating empathy for the victims, and I'm making you, the audience, watch it, going, you know, I can't stop this, and knowing that what I was doing with a movie that had to be PG-13, and you have to be, and PG-13, the particulars of how to navigate that are very specific. How do I do this so I can push it right to the edge and make it as visceral as I can without crossing that line? We would not have done that in another Jack Reacher. In the next Jack Reacher, we were ready to go full-on rated R, and it was going to be visceral and violent and brutal, because the market had begun to realize that the desperate clinging to PG-13 was not necessarily sound. That doesn't suit all movies. So that, yes, that was the intention from the very, very beginning. We recut the movie after I did my first assembly. Tom asked me to recut the movie and try to make it a mystery and to hide the shooter's identity, which I did. I did that, and I said, I'll do that on the condition that we can test both versions of the movie. And one of the great things about Tom Cruise, and he believed very, very, very strongly that you wanted to be in the point of view of the protagonist. We tested the movies back to back, and that was the only difference in the two movies, and we tested them on the same night. And to his credit, Tom called me the next day and he said, "Did you read the cards?" I said, "Yep, I've got them right here." And Tom reads them all. He goes through all the cards. He said, "Did you read them?" I said, "Yep." He goes, "Thanks for trying that, man." I was like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I appreciate it, but your version works." And I said, "It's a difference of 2 points, Tom." Like, it's not like, it wasn't like some giant swing. And he goes, "Just read the cards, dude. That version worked better. It just worked better. And thank you for trying that." That's one of the reasons I love working for Tom, is he will not say it's gotta be this, and this is my way of making movies. He is a student of film, and he works for the audience, and he listens to what they are responding to emotionally. And so the audience kind of becomes the great leveler. Someone asked me recently on social media, they said, "Do you and Tom Cruise ever argue?" And I said, "Yeah, all the time, for your benefit." Like, it's not about me winning, and it's my movie and it's got to be this. We look at, there's times he turns to me now and he's just like, "I don't want to." I go, "Just try it." And he's like, "But I know this is going to work." And I said, "Yep, it probably is. Have this in your pocket." I could sit here and argue with you that I think this is a better way to do it, but I don't know. And how many times have we been sure something was the way it had to be, and then we got in the editing room and looked at it and went, "Well, that just didn't work." So there's the only arguments we have are kind of with our own sensibility of, does this work or doesn't it? And Reacher was really the beginning of that. I mean, we were working together on Valkyrie. We were working together on Ghost Protocol. We were working together on The Tourist, but Reacher was the first time we were working together without working through someone or around someone or in collaboration with someone. It was really Tom and I kind of focused on, on figuring out how to merge our two storytelling styles. And that's what you're seeing.
What was it like for you getting out of director jail and being on this huge movie with a bunch of movie stars and cool set pieces and everything else?
It was great, and it was terrifying because I knew now it's time to put my money where my mouth is. But I also knew the movie wasn't huge. I did the math. It was like the movie had a $60 million budget. Tom Cruise's movies, on average, made about $200 million domestically. The movie wasn't going to lose money. It would have to be so bad and such a catastrophic failure to lose money that if it was, then I guess everybody who put me in movie jail was right. So I knew, I'm okay, and I knew it was somewhat in my wheelhouse. It was a step into a bigger world, but not a giant leap into a bigger world. It still was rooted in some of the things I understood, the violence of it, and the world, the kind of the gritty, more blue collar criminal world of The Way of the Gun, and all the lessons I learned from that. And I mean, I had so much time to study The Way of the Gun, and so much time to study everything that went into that movie not working the way that it did and being rejected the way that it was. And mistakes that I had made, really on two levels. One was just practical things that I did in order to be collaborative and to think in terms of budget and schedule, et cetera, et cetera. Things I just threw away on the day and really didn't realize until I was in the editing room going, wow, I should not have done that. In being amenable, you actually gave up the heart and soul of the movie. But also in other ways that I had rules that I created for myself on The Way of the Gun rather obsessively. And it's a thing I talk about all the time. You create rules for yourself, and a lot of times those rules can actually choke the narrative to death. And so I saw a movie very clearly in my head, and through a series of compromises shot the exact opposite movie. So that when I got onto Reacher, I started learning, don't go so much for a look of the film, or go for the film. Like, just try to tell the story. And that was the beginning of my learning. It was the beginning of the trajectory that I'm at now, which is I don't at all consider what a film will look like. I don't consider what the design of the film is going to be. I discover it as I go, and I do that based on who I hire as my cinematographer, who I hire as my production designer, and what cast I have, and what's the general direction I'm headed in. Reacher was very, very different. That is the script, I would say, of all the scripts I've worked on with Tom, that was the one that changed the least. The only thing that really changed in that script was the car chase, and that's and that was kind of the beginning of our foray into action and where we are now.
Well, do you want to talk about that car chase? We love that car chase so much.
There's a shot at the beginning. Just quickly, I want to ask about the shot at the beginning of the car chase that leads into it. When there's an insert of Tom's hand slowly going for the stick shift before the chase begins. It's like this heavenly, gorgeous shot. Did you actually shoot that in the car?
We shot that on a buck, and it's funny you picked that shot out because that is a shot Tom Cruise talks about to this day.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. It's stunning. And that's Caleb Deschanel. And Caleb is great. Like, I did not know how to work with Caleb. I did not know enough about the craft of cinematography to really understand how to interface with Caleb and his team. And I would have a very different working relationship with Caleb today if I was making another movie with him. But Caleb is all those inserts. If you look at the inserts in Jack Reacher, that's really where I learned to do those. And you'll see if you go and watch Edge of Tomorrow, a lot of the inserts in Edge of Tomorrow I shot working as Splinter Unit when we were reshooting big chunks of that movie. That's all stuff I took from Caleb. That's Edge of Tomorrow is really where I learned more about lenses than I did while shooting Jack Reacher. Jack Reacher is where I started understanding anamorphic versus spherical. I shot The Way of the Gun with spherical lenses and not anamorphic. And it was a casual decision I made rather than a learned one when I did The Way of the Gun, and then was always frustrated why The Way of the Gun didn't look more like a movie to me, the way I imagined movies to look. And it was only when I discovered that I started to really analyze what was it about the movies I loved that they all had in common, that I started to see widescreen and anamorphic. The Taking the Pelham 1, 2, 3, it's all shot on anamorphic lenses, and it's kind of one of the cornerstone movies for me. So understanding how to shoot that. Now, what I couldn't articulate to Caleb was what I was after in other things. And so there was a disconnect in terms of our understanding of how to get specific things. And there was never time to prepare. So there were shots that I imagined and storyboarded that we didn't have the equipment for on the day. And Caleb is very classic in his style, and I had things that I was doing that were kind of more radical. And Caleb was very funny. He's like, here you are doing one of your crazy shots again. You know, the shot with Reacher rolling over into the sniper's position and things like that. Caleb is Never Cry Wolf and the Black Stallion. He's much more a student of Gordon Willis and learned from Gordon Willis. So the movie is kind of at war in that it has elements of both worlds. It's in many ways very elegantly framed, and in other ways it's doing stuff that's more radical. And I'd love to go full circle now and go back to Caleb with a thing that is more like Caleb's world and Caleb's style, and merge those two. What you're feeling in Jack Reacher is kind of the tension of me trying to understand what the essence of cinematography and texture really is, and it's a tremendously misunderstood discipline in cinematography. And you look at Gordon Willis, and his best work is where Gordon Willis's style is paired with the right story and storytelling. And a big part of cinematography is who is your production designer, what are your locations, and there's a whole thing that goes into the texture of it. Back then, I thought, oh, you hire X cinematographer, and your movie looks like that cinematographer's movies. It's taken me a long, long time to realize how the recipe really, really works, so that I have a more fluid relationship with the cinematographer. Fraser Taggart and I, we have a completely different relationship than I've had with any other cinematographer before that.
You want to talk about the car chase?
Sure.
Wait, what's up? You said you shot it on a buck? That shot? What does that mean?
A buck is you take a car and you essentially cut it up, and you're on a stage, so we took one of the wrecked cars that was really wrecked, and we cut it up so that you could get into the car and get in the places. We do that on every Mission movie. Anytime you see Tom pulling an emergency brake or stamping on the brakes of a car, there's no way to get the camera in those places. You're just using a piece of the car. And that's what we call buck work. And we do that in every movie, where sometimes we build it, sometimes you'll take an old junker and you'll cut it apart and use the pieces you need. That's because I tend not to shoot, just point the camera at an object and shoot it. That to me is information. I choose to shape the shots so that when you see an emergency brake, you're not looking at it the way Tom's eyes would be looking at it. You're underneath the emergency brake looking up at Tom and feeling that. Now, that's how I shoot all my inserts now, that everything is about finding ways to compose the shots so that when you're looking at an object, it isn't just, hey, there's the cup of coffee we're talking about. It's a shot that says this cup of coffee is important. That shot of that gear shift is lit in this kind of amazing. So the light is beautifully shot, but it's also the choice of lens. But it's also the way Tom puts his hand on the gear shift, which we did many, many, many different ways until we found the version where he grabs the ball between his middle and ring finger. And he grabs it almost like he's grabbing the grip of a gun. When he grabbed it other ways, it was the way you would grab the gear shift, but it also made his hand look awkward. It just didn't have power. That shot is you're watching the early on understanding of how to shape and craft the shot so the shot has an emotional feeling to it. And the fact that you are 10 years later talking about, dude, when he goes and puts his hand on the stick shift, that's what every shot in a movie should be. That's what it's used to. And anybody reaching for a set of car keys or looking at a photograph, it should have some emotionality to it. Anytime you just point the camera at something and then drop it into the movie, you're asking the audience to process it mentally as opposed to feel it as soon as they see it. And that's what you're feeling there. That's why we go to the trouble of cutting the cars up and getting those angles. It's so that the movie's never breaking from the emotional trajectory you're on.
Can I just tell you my favorite shot in this movie real quick before we get into the car chase?
If you insist.
Okay, so Tom is on the bridge trying to figure out sort of the placement of everything. And there's that awesome shot where it goes by him and then it pans over to Michael Raymond James in the car and you realize he's watching Reacher. It's just such a fucking cool shot. You know what I'm talking about, Charles?
It's what we call the triple 180 because the camera does a 180, Michael does a 180, and Tom does a 180.
Yeah.
And you're doing that in it's all shot on a rig called a biscuit rig, which is, it's like a process trailer, but much, much, much lower to the ground so that it's essentially a car that's like a flatbed and you can put another car on it. And then you could put camera rigs on it and it's much more, and it's self-driving. You don't need a trailer. In The Way of the Gun, when you see all the stuff where they're driving, they're actually on a trailer being pulled by a big truck. So that it's a whole circus that goes driving around. The biscuit rig is very self-contained, and Caleb and his camera operator are sitting on the hood of this thing, driving on that highway. And we shot that at Magic Hour on a holiday weekend. And the only way to get it was to take a car and drop Tom off on a bridge and then just drive away and leave him there. And the biscuit rig would drive on a circuit. There was a bridge going across the river one way and a bridge going across the river the other way, about a mile or so down the river. So the biscuit rig would just drive in a circle, and there was a radio on the ground next to Tom saying, "We're coming, we're coming, we're coming." And he would have to coordinate his turn with seeing the biscuit rig coming out of the corner of his eye. So you're seeing Tom turning, and then the camera turning, and Michael looking at Tom. You had to coordinate all of that, and then just do it. And we did it, and kept doing it until the sun went down. And at the last shot we did, the last time we did it, was slightly better timing, but by then the sun was so low that you could see the shadow of the biscuit rig cutting across Tom. He was kind of, the camera actually, its shadow appeared in the shot. So we ended up using the one that had the best, the next to best light. And that's how we got that shot.
Wow.
And there were people just driving down the highway going, "Is that Tom Cruise just standing on the side of the highway, just doing nothing?" Because it would take about 15 minutes. It would take about 15 minutes for the car to get back around and shoot it again. And I'm in the back seat of the car with a tiny little clamshell monitor on my chest. I'm like laying down in the back seat of the car, directing Michael and kind of doing timing to the eye. I can see what the camera's seeing.
Wow. Well, this is your forum to talk about the car chase.
The car chase. Yeah. Or as we refer to it to this day, the chase that ate Pittsburgh. That was, the car chase was meant to be, it's a blurb of about 3 pages of action in the script where the cops come to get Reacher. He gets in a car, drives it away, crashes it a few blocks away, gets out and runs. and there was a foot chase through backyards, and the cops sent dogs after him, and Reacher had a fight with dogs, which I had learned from my brother, who was a Navy SEAL and a technical advisor on first few films I did. I had learned from my brother how to fight with dogs, and which is pretty cool, and you've never seen it in movies before. It's actually not The Dark Knight, where Batman's beating up that looks cooler, but that's actually not how you would fight a dog. And that was kind of the cool stuff I wanted to do. And Tom said, hey, there's an opportunity to make this kind of the signature sequence of the movie. And I was given latitude to do what I wanted and to do this chase scene. So having done a chase scene in The Way of the Gun that conceptually was there, but kind of we made it up as we went along, and I've kind of thrown things at the wall to see what would stick, and we didn't have a lot of permits for what we did. And it's like, I'm going to do this a little better. And I planned it very, very meticulously. I storyboarded it down to the frame. And Paul Jennings, the stunt coordinator, second unit director on the movie, kept talking about this thing called the Russian arm. He kept saying the Russian arm, which was, of course, the one we ended up using was called a pursuit arm. And he said, when you see the pursuit arm and you see what it can do, you're going to love it. He just kept talking about it, but I didn't really know what it was. And it showed up on the first night, and it was a Porsche Cayenne with a crane on the roof. And this amazing team, there's a camera operator, crane operator, focus puller, stunt driver. And I really didn't know what this thing could do until the first shot I did in it, which is the shot of Reacher when he comes he comes fishtailing out of darkness around into the first well-lit street in the car chase. He does a fishtail away from camera, and the camera pulls up alongside of him and looks in the driver's side window. And my mind was blown, and I threw out all my storyboards and redesigned the car chase on the fly. And everything became about exploiting the technology and not worrying about not obsessively focusing on, well, I have these shots and I've got to edit it this way. I was like, nope, we're going with this because I see the potential of this thing, and we're going to squeeze every bit of energy we can out of it. That was part of it. The other big facet of the car chase was that Tom had a hard out date on that movie because he had to go and promote Ghost Protocol. And so the plan was Tom was going to leave, and we were going to shoot all the stuff without Tom, which was a lot of Rosamund Pike stuff. Then we found out that Rosamund Pike was pregnant, and suddenly she had an out date that coincided with Tom's. So we were rushing to finish all of their material at the same time. And now we had added this car chase to the movie. And so the only way for us to finish everything was if Tom and I retooled second unit and turned them into a second main unit. We called them action unit. And Tom and I would shoot the car chase at night, and we'd shoot all the drama during the day. And that meant for most of the car chase, Tom and I were working around the clock. And a lot of times when you see Tom driving those scenes, he's worked a 12-hour day before going out and shooting all of the stuff that he was shooting. So it's massive sleep deprivation, and combined with a largely improvised car chase, combined with equipment we'd never used before and we're discovering, and a mechanics unit. These guys who were all building the cars, they were rebuilding them every night, or every day rather, to get them ready for the next night. And we had 4 cars. We had 2 interior cars and 2 exterior cars. The interiors you only ever saw inside the car. You didn't see the outside of it. So they were banded with big steel plates, like a crash cage, that you could mount cameras on, and they would also make the car sturdier. And then we had 2 exterior cars that we tried to keep pristine, but also in continuity as the cars were getting dented up. And so I would say a week into that car chase, it all started to become a blur. In my mind, I was shooting that car chase for months. It was really only over the course of a few weeks. And only 9 people on the crew worked on the main and action unit, because They were the absolute essential people, and they were the only people who could keep up with the work schedule. And there are 3 or 4 days within that sequence where Tom and I worked around the clock. We worked 24 hours with, like, I was taking 20-minute cat naps in the back of the pursuit vehicle. And we were learning. You're seeing Tom and I learn our language, in terms of action, nonverbal storytelling, while we're making that sequence. I had a real cool shot I envisioned but couldn't be there to shoot, where a helicopter came into frame pursuing Tom, and it was I never got it the way I wanted it. I didn't understand lenses and action choreography enough to know how to get it. And so I was very disappointed by it. And when we were screening the movie, we kept getting notes that the chase was too long. And no matter how much we cut it down, we kept getting that note. And I pulled that shot out, and all the notes about length went away. And I realized it was one shot that was doing it, which was this helicopter shot, because it was halting the energy of the sequence. I learned a very valuable lesson in that once you put your foot on the gas, you cannot take your foot off. You have to keep going and keep the audience arrested in a certain emotional energy. And the minute you let go, you have to reset that. You have to get them back into that energy. You could see that lesson in every car chase I've done since then.
And we're back.
All right, we're back.
Yeah.
Part 2 in the can. We got another part to come. Next week, we'll do part 3 with Christopher McQuarrie to wrap this up and wrap up the year that we've had, which has been truly remarkable. This week, it was great that, what he said about his collaboration with Caleb Deschanel. I thought that was fascinating. Like, that he'd like to go back to him and work with him again, knowing what he knows now on the right project. I would love to see that. I'm sure you would too.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this movie looks so amazing. There's a shot where he's in like a hardware store or something, and it's like the most beautiful looking image you've ever seen. It's just, I think that their partnership was really great, and I thought it was really mature and self-reflective of him to say that he could have handled things differently and that he would love to have that chance in the future. I just thought that was very moving. I don't know.
Well, I thought it was really funny too to hear the story about like that amazing shot where Cruise is getting set up with the sniper gun, and it like does that kind of rotating on it. The camera kind of rotates on its. I don't know how to explain it. It's not like a tilt. It's sort of not a tilt. It's just like it goes sideways.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and it turns over with Cruise as he's getting into position. And he said something like, Caleb Deschanel was like, "Oh, it's another one of your tricky shots," or whatever.
Yeah.
I love that. It's great. I loved hearing him talk about that shot of the gear shift, which I'm obsessed with. And it was cool to hear him talk about your favorite shot on the bridge. That shot is awesome too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
really,
man.
It's a really amazing looking movie. And does not get enough credit for that. But
yeah. So go out and watch it. If you haven't seen it, watch it. If you've seen it already, watch it again, celebrate its 10th anniversary, and come back next week for part 3. I have to give a special thank you to our friends in Texas and to Jacob from Holland. Thank you to Jacob and our friends in Texas for helping us out with this episode. And we're really grateful for all of our Patreon subscribers. And also I want to credit our editor and mixer, Luke Burson, and our music composer, Kevin Blumenfeld. And I just want to tell everybody to sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/lightthefuse. We just did an episode about the Sight and Sound poll, and in particular, Christopher McQuarrie's ballot in the Sight and Sound poll. He picked, he does a preface and explains that it's not the 10 greatest movies of all time, in his opinion. He just says it's 10 great movies that are great for this particular time. It's really cool. We did a whole breakdown of that. That was a good episode, and that we do bonus episodes every week. So if you sign up at the bonus content level, you will get those. In addition to this, if you want to hear us ramble on forever, it's just I know it'll make all your dreams come true. So please support the show. Also, go to our TeePublic store, which is teepublic.com/user/lightthefusepod. Or if you don't want to write that down, you can just go to our website, lightthefusepodcast.com, go to the merch section, and it's linked there. Buy a shirt or a magnet or whatever to support the show. What else, Drew?
Well, I want to just encourage everybody to like, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening to this podcast. And to remind people that we're still on Twitter as of December 19th, 2022. So be sure to follow us there, and on Instagram at LightTheFusePod. And we are getting our Discord server up and running, and that'll be something that we launch hopefully in early 2023. So
yes, that'll be for the Patreon subscribers. And I forgot to say thank you, so I'm glad you said that. Thank you to Amber Cohen, our intern who set that up. And you need to sign up for it, Drew, because did you get that email from her?
Yes, I do need to sign up for it. You were right.
I signed up. I'm in. I'm learning Discord. I'm getting good at it.
Wow! Wow! This is
That's
a
not
whole
really
new
true,
you.
but I'm learning how to use it slowly.
Yes, it's a little confusing, and has thwarted us in the past. But we're gonna do it. 2023 is our year. Our Discord is going to flourish.
Yes.
And yeah, I just want to encourage everybody to come back next week, because I think that the third part is really fascinating and really speaks to future potential McQuarrie Cruise collaborations. And yeah, that's it. We'll be back next week.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. Before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod, and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcast@gmail.com. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.